For those of you who haven't met before, my name's Craig McCoy. I'm the chair of London HR Connection, which is a role I've had for the last 8 years or so. I'm also a senior HR director with over 30 years experience in the profession, and I'm a fellow of the CIPD. I myself have held 16 HR director roles in different capacities, both as a permanent and as an interim, and I'm currently the interim HR director at St John Ambulance. A few words about London HR Connection. Maybe Denise, if you can share the screen. We're a long-established professional networking group for everyone with an interest in the world of HR. Originally established in the 1980s, and our origins were within the CIPD and remain affiliated to the CIPD. However, we've got an independent board of 9 senior professionals. In normal times, before pandemic, remember that, it's all coming back soon. We were very much based on live events with great speakers and great networking opportunities. That is all coming back. So watch this space. We are starting from May onwards. At this point, I'll introduce our speakers. Very pleased today to welcome our speakers from Black Isle, who are our sponsors for today. Firstly, Jeremy Campbell is their chief executive and one of the creators of The Big Approach and Nudge Technology. And Jeremy's joined today by Jeff Wheeldon. Jeff, who's the group head of sales and strategic alliances at leading IT services provider VCG. And finally by Athol Duncan, who is executive coach, a board advisor, and author of books including Leaders in Lockdown, which is a great book providing very rich insights into how the world of business is changing post-COVID. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Athol, who'll be chairing our webinar today. Over to you, Athol.
Thanks very much, Craig, and it's great to see so many of you on the call. Let me explain just a little bit of the background about where we got to where we are today with nudge technology and with the big approach. My colleague Jeremy Campbell, who'll be joining us in a minute, he's having a little technical issue about getting in. He's been working on this theory for a very long time. I myself really got very engaged with this during COVID, because what we did at Black Isle Group was we launched a project which was called Leaders in Lockdown. And it ended up in this book. And some of you may have heard me talking about this book before. So we followed 28 global business leaders through COVID to see really how they led through the crisis and how they thought the world was going to change. And we got to this moment where we are now, where people are dealing with more change at a greater pace than ever before. And we came to question, how do we do change? And is it time to do change in a different way? So we worked throughout COVID on the big approach. We worked on the nudge theory, and we're going to explain a little bit about that to you today. But the first question that I want to ask you all is, of all the changes that we did in all your businesses through COVID, most of those changes we could have done without COVID. And what does that say about us as change leaders and the way that we've done change in the past? So what I want to do is introduce Jeff Wheeldon, who is a client of Black Isle Group. And Jeff works for the managed services technology business VCG. And he has been using the big approach, and he's been using the nudge technology in action. So he's a living case study of how this works. So first of all, Jeff, I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about your business, VCG, because there were particular issues that you were dealing with in the business. Denise, I think you're maybe just coming through there on the sound. There was particular stuff that you were doing. So give us a little bit of the background of that, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity to work with you and share with you today the real life experience of working with Jeremy and the team. It's as you say, we've been challenged over the last couple of years as individuals, as businesses, and I think some of the changes we've put in place probably we could have driven if we'd have been that thought leadership, but it's been sort of compounded and driven through the COVID and lockdown. So I think from our side, I mean, we're a technology company. We work across multiple vertical markets, different types of business. The one constant within our organization is we're all about people, which I think is why working today with the London HR Connect is a great opportunity to share our story. You know, we pride ourselves on our people in the business. We pride ourselves on the culture and the DNA of the organization. But we were two businesses coming together to be one. We were different teams, we were different cultures, and we needed to establish that single entity as an organization. So one of the great conversations I had with Jeremy initially was how do we forge that understanding and purpose within the business. My responsibility is sales and marketing and alliances, but actually the makeup of my engagement with customers is across multiple parts of the business. So from my perspective, there were 3 teams within the business, 2 organizations, and lockdown to deal with. And what we needed to do was find a method, a way of bringing those individuals, bringing together the working behaviors, and actually establish one principle. And I think what really stood out for all of us was you can't do one big change, one big wholesale change. You have to build through small changes that people can consume. It has to be about changing behaviors rather than it just being a forced change. So from my perspective and from the various elements of the business I worked with, it was understanding what is a very simplistic approach to bringing together quite large challenges, which were around the different people, the cultures, the teams, but actually establishing that methodology that everybody could be part of and actually everybody could contribute to as well. That was,
Okay.
a major step.
So essentially the way that this works is to take a big goal and break it down into everyday actions, to create a 10-week sprint and to enable everyone in the team to have a coach, and then to focus on these nudges, on these things that people will do every day, and to use the technology to support that, Jeff, to nudge people as individuals. And then when people are using the technology, it allows the leaders in the business to track the performance, to see what is happening, particularly important in remote working. So what roughly was your big goal? And then how did you work with the team to break this down to these everyday nudges?
So we had three goals that we set. The most important was to bring 3 teams together as one, rather than working as disparate groups of individuals. We had a goal which was, as you can imagine in our industry, was about growing revenues and growing the size of the organization in terms of the customers we were working with. And the third goal was around training, because actually, again, part of the focus was around that knowledge development within the various teams. So to put some clarity, I guess, context into, I keep talking about 3 teams. It was the sales team, marketing team, and a pre-sales team, all of whom have customer-facing interactions. And as a business that listens to customers to understand what IT is going to do for their business, those 3 entities are very key to the customer engagement. So 3 goals defined. I think what you said then is so critical in terms of daily activities. So this is not, we have a goal set and we're going to do one great big step to get to the goal. Actually, it was about how do you break it down on a daily basis. So to give you an example, the change in terms of people's time management, which we all talk about, we can't make time in terms, we can't create extra time in our days, but we can manage time better. And actually, by using the nudge tool, which has been a real critical factor, I think, in terms of prompting and probing people to remind themselves, hence it's a nudge, is every day do something different, but do something different that contributes to the success of that end goal. So again, it's taking the big goal, breaking it down to small steps. To give you an example, something really, really simple, which became a very powerful output for one of the individuals and actually was mirrored by many others. Even putting a nudge in to take 15 minutes away from your desk without your phone to take time to think about what's going on in the world around you, not just be reactive to everything happening. For that individual, totally changed their ability to positively and mentally work in a hybrid environment, because at this point in time, we've all become hybrid workers. We're in a different environment than being office-based, but also led coincidentally to the individual turning up at a coffee shop, sitting, having a coffee, and actually starting to talk to other people about what lines of business are in, what challenges they're faced. So a 15-minute nudge to take time away from their desk actually helped in terms of their well-being, in terms of their mindset, but in terms of contributing to development of activities was a huge step in that individual's development.
And Jeff, you've talked a bit about how this is performance coaching rather than performance management. So maybe say a little bit about that. And how did it help because everyone was remote? Because we've all had this issue that, you know, for most of 2 years, we've not been in the office face to face or at the shoulder of our colleagues. So performance management v performance coaching, and then a little bit maybe about the remote working, the hybrid working.
The management versus coaching, I think, is a critical shift. I think too often it's too easy to get down to almost the sort of the tactical, the measured conversations when you're working with people in the team on a one-to-one basis. Whereas, so for me, coaching is about listening to the individuals. It's about understanding what's gone well, understanding how do we do more of that. Whereas if things haven't been great, I had a really poor week. Well, what made that week poor? Let's try to make sure we avoid that. That coaching shift in mindset and discussion forum with the team was a massive movement for us. But even further than that, creating a peer coaching model. So actually what we found was the team themselves started to work together in actually helping each other, and they took leadership themselves. So they created drop-in sessions, which was not something that I necessarily, asked, mandated or put in place. The team themselves started to understand the importance of actually helping each other, coaching each other, sharing, good, bad days, war stories, positive successes. So for me, that's been a shift actually now that carries across the whole organization, that mindset of when you're working with people, the conversation has to not just be about a metric, it has to be about the individual's mindset, where they're at, keeping that positivity and helping them overcome challenges. And that, of course, naturally fell into how do you help people who are working remotely? Because some people take to it naturally and find it a very positive and easy place to work. A lot of the team actually felt that ability to come together. And if you think about the nudge technology referred to, this platform, it creates visibility as well. So everybody has visibility of what are other people doing, how are they achieving that success. So that community it built was very, very strong, especially in the example of those 3 teams that I was trying to pull together.
So just a couple of things here. Please put questions into the chat. Fire your questions into the chat, and Craig and myself will keep an eye out for them, for myself and for Jeff. And just a little bit of further explanation that the nudge technology, the tech, sits on your phone and it nudges you across the day to carry out these particular actions that Jeff is talking about. And you click on that to say you've done the actions or you've not done the actions. That then aggregates up so that the whole team can see what's going on. Then there's a coaching conversation every week. At the end of the week, you fill in, you're prompted to fill in a little bit, which gives feedback. How are you feeling? Marking yourself out of a score of 10. And through that, there's far more engagement particularly in this remote team situation. You're able to see people far more clearly. So what was it sounds a bit to me like the whole process, the big approach was coalescing the team together, was focusing the team together as well, Jeff. And the technology might have been prompting them. Yes, the coaching might have been helping them, but it's this bringing together, particularly when you had these two teams and these from what were previously 2 different companies.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when Jeremy and I sat down and we looked at what we were trying to achieve, the biggest success factor, which, you know, I'm proud to say we achieved, and if anything, and it goes back to its behavioural change. This is not a mandated for the next 10 weeks you're going to do these activities. It's all about getting people to believe and adopt and change. And, you know, a really bad analogy could be, you know, people who want to, you know, change their sort of diet, and they want to maybe lose a bit of weight after the Christmas time. They kind of do a quick short burst of not eating certain foods. They get to a weight they want to be, and they think, right, I'm done, and they go back to normal. This is all about changing your lifestyle habits, and I'm really proud the team have absolutely taken on board. But you're right, it brought the team together centrally. They work together, they help each other. Even after the 10-week sprint, the first sprint, a lot of those activities have continued. You know, I see it day in, day out in the behaviors of the teams, on how they're working together, how they're helping each other, how they're motivating each other. You know, and for me personally, there's a phrase which I kind of stuck in my head, which was time out is time gained. I was terrible for being very busy and a focused busy person, but just very, very busy, and not often having time away from myself to be able to look at the bigger picture. And I think that for me was a big step. So the that community building, the team build has been a huge step in moving us.
Okay, so there's some questions here. So Rob says, did you find any difference in engagement between extroverts and introverts?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we had when you build the nudges, there's a plan obviously in terms of before you start doing the program, and we asked each individual to propose their own nudges, and then effectively we sort of validated them as a management team. That wasn't to mandate what nudges would be, but what we wanted to do was keep everybody on the same sort of direction. And we did have to smile when one of the teams, the sort of techie end of the spectrum, came up with about 500 nudges for their sort of how I'm going to change my world. And you had the sales guys who kind of had one. So, you know, introvert, extrovert, maybe not directly answering the question, but certainly extremes. It was about making sure they understood the common goal, and then making them understand how the nudge relates to the goal in relation to them as an individual.
And a great question from Ruth Lawrence here. Did you find that most people welcomed the nudge and did take action, or did you find it took people time to embrace it?
Being very honest, a mixed bag again. There was people who immediately saw the value, that it would help them by having that nudge. There was certainly some individuals in the team who were, you know, a little bit skeptical as to whether this change in behavior would, or the change in model would really help. But what I would say is very quickly, and I'm talking within days, everybody involved immediately recognized, because one little element, again back to that 15-minute example, one little element changing the dynamic of their day and how they're working, it just filtered through because they were sharing it with each other.
So Jeff, last question for you, and then I'll bring Jeremy in because he'll be good at answering some of the other things that are going in the chat here. What was the final result of it? Was there a tangible final result? You might not want to say a figure, but where did it help you get to in the end?
So again, I've probably sound like I'm labouring the point, but it was really critical. The biggest success, which we absolutely achieved and is continuing, is that teamwork. And I watch still people taking individual leadership and pulling together people, whether that's how do I use LinkedIn differently, whether that's how do I create little drop-in sessions to, you know, I'm having a bad week, I need points of reference at a very measurable level. Quite simply, we absolutely smashed the targets out of the park, as they say. What we thought was stretch goals, and we delivered well over and above them.
Okay, and they were mainly targets around about sales, yeah?
Yeah.
Although you also had targets around about engagement, presumably, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. So the metrics in terms of, you know, growth in the revenues we were seeing, growth in the number of customers we were working with, they were key measurable metrics. And then obviously the cultural change and the team change, which is obviously a very different. And again, if coming back to the point, if you said to somebody, go and work 3 teams together over 10 weeks and then come and tell me if it worked at the end, I'm not sure you'd be able to really defend the success or failure of it. With the nudge engagement, with the reporting, with the metrics and the feedback, you can genuinely, hand on heart, at the end of that time, confirm the success that we produced. So it's the reporting and the metrics that come with the whole cultural change is a massive value.
Okay. Jeff, you have a little pause for breath there, and I'll nudge Jeremy now because there's quite a good question from Alistair. I kind of outlined some of the basics of it, Jeremy, but what Alistair's asking is, could you share a little bit more about the journey that employees receive with this nudge technology? What's the frequency? What are the outcomes? Is it relying on social proof? If managers monitor nudges, could this be, and there's a couple of questions about that, about whether this is seen as a form of control. Perceptions of Nicola Parkins is asking, is it perceptions of micromanagement or Big Brother? Maybe take us through a little bit about the journey first, and then we'll come to Big Brother in a minute.
Yeah, thanks. I thought, well, let me just take that point straight away. The whole ethos of the big approach and nudge is the complete opposite to that. It's definitely a lot more carrot than it is stick. The whole idea is to help people perform within the workplace. It's not a performance management tool, and the way that we like to phrase it is more of a performance coaching tool. And yes, there is performance outcomes because business want outcomes, but it's very much about helping people be their best. Of course, one thing is for certain, that you can't change anybody, and if people don't want to change, they won't change. But we work on the premise that most people turn up to work to do a good job, and most people do want to do a good job. They just need more support. And one of the reasons we put the whole process together was, in my experience as an HR director, one of the things I witnessed a lot was poor conversations with managers and teams. And what the big approach does is it allows managers, because we put in a process where in effect it's a cascade of a coaching culture. So we are coaching the in this case the leader of this division, which was Jeff. We're then coaching Jeff's direct reports, and then we're coaching also the salespeople and the techie people as well. So it's a cascade of coaching that goes throughout the whole of the organization. What we're doing is we're using the data. So we're asking 3 questions at the end of a reflection, which is, what are the 3 things that went well? What are the 3 things that didn't go well? What's the one thing I can do to help you this next week? And that data is then used as the basis of a coaching conversation rather than a performance conversation. So traditionally and typically what you'd have is a conversation which is, what are your numbers for this week? Or did you, in other areas of the business, did you achieve whatever your KPIs were? That's not a coaching conversation. That's not about getting the best out of people. What this process does is it helps people have better conversations, because it's the start of a coaching conversation, because you have data that actually says, I've had a really tough week, this happened, that happened. So the conversation can be started with what the challenges are so that you can address them. And then what we found with Jeff's business is that the level of the conversations with the managers and in Jeff's division was basically heightened a great deal. And a lot of the feedback that we got from doing the peer coaching was, I'm now having really good conversations with my line manager and also with each other. I don't know if Jeff's covered this, but one of the great benefits of the peer coaching is that cohesive, cohesion of a team, and actually people working with each other.
Yeah, and the other part of Alistair's question there, Sabina's got a great question that I'll come to in a minute, but the other bit of Alistair's question there is, what's the social proof? So I think that means, what's the science behind it? And there is a bit topical at the moment with these books like Atomic Habits and Tiny Habits, which I presume are the same kind of principle, that you break the big goal down to everyday actions. Yeah, do you want to say a little bit about the science behind it?
Yeah, so the principle is really very sound, and it is baked in behavioral science, which is it's not the knowledge that actually makes the changes. It's actually taking the action of the knowledge. So we live in a world that has more than enough knowledge, with Google, with books, with YouTube, you can get as much knowledge as you want. It's not the knowledge, it's actually taking the action of the knowledge. And it's very similar to the learning development world, which is I go to a seminar, I go to a course, I go away to a business school. I find I learn an enormous amount, but like most people, do you actually put it into action? So on the Monday morning, what are you going to do is the follow-up for the learning. And this is basically a process that encourages people to take actions. And of course, as we all know, that some of the greatest learnings that we get from the mistakes we make. But of course, you can't make mistakes unless you're actually doing it. And what most people don't do is put the learning into action to make the mistakes, to then learn from it and then go back.
So this is maybe a little bit for Jeff here, but maybe Jeremy can come in as well. Sabina's question was, what are the barriers that you faced? How did you overcome those doubters?
Yeah, and there always are some, and Jeremy probably can picture the scene when we first launched the event. For me, one of the biggest aspects was getting everybody involved early. So this was not presented to the teams as a sort of, this is being done to you, but this is something we are doing together. Identify the purpose that we were all there to try and achieve in our day-to-day roles, but as a team. But I think that the launch that we did was so critical, which was getting everybody together physically, getting all of the naysayers and all of the questions out on the table from day one. We had Andy Peter-Smith, who's the CEO of VCG, on site as well. So if there were any questions that maybe even challenged the goals that we were setting, we had everybody there and then on day one. Now, don't get me wrong, that didn't mean that we left day one with everybody suddenly on side. So a lot of it was then back to really what Jeremy and the whole process is about, which is, for me, it's about giving the control to the people as well. So the question about, is it Big Brother? We didn't really get that from anyone, because it's about giving the individuals control. They control what they do. We're trying to guide them, trying to help them, trying to get them to question themselves. And actually very quickly, even the individuals who sort of sat there with their arms folded at launch day very quickly started to see the value and the benefit it was bringing to them, especially because they were watching their colleagues and their peers actually start to develop and grow as individuals and perform. So there's that internal competition to a degree that also, I think, achieved that real success. We probably ended up with 90 something% of everybody on board. There were individuals who probably still were never 100% there.
A question, Jeremy, maybe for you from Chris Thorne, and then Craig, you're looking awfully relaxed, so I'm going to put you on the spot in a second. Chris Thorne says, well, we did a little bit about the process, but how do you go from defining the vision for the culture, identifying the desired behaviours, to then putting the behaviour into nudges and measuring the success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me just finish off something that Jeff said as well, which I think is also really useful in terms of the in terms of trying to face into the naysayers, if you like, or the people who don't get it. One of the things that Jeff did brilliantly, which I think helped enormously, was he sent out just a really straightforward comms every week as well of exactly what was going on. I think that helped enormously, and that was just that regular kind of update of what we're actually doing. So in fairness to him, his comms were very much, here's what's going well, here's what not, here's our challenges, here's the things that we need to do better with. And I think that helped a lot as well, because it was full transparency of the whole process. And we're sorry, what was the other question?
The other bit was really moving from the culture to the behaviours, to the nudges, and there's two questions on measuring the success, because Martin Kirk's also asking about running reports and analytics on the nudges.
Yeah, Okay, so let me just try and deal with all of that. So the way that we do it is it's a cascade. So obviously the overall organization has a vision, an objective, an overall objective. Jeff's business is growth, which is not unusual in terms of organizations, and also bringing businesses to two businesses together. So the idea is that you use the overall goal, vision of the organization, and that then gets cascaded down to the different divisions. Very similar. I mean, that's what happens anyway in all businesses. So those objectives on each one of the departments then get cascaded down to the different departments. So if I'm in the finance area, then I have a set of objectives which link back into the overall goal or vision of the organization. The idea then is to spend time, workshop exactly what nudges or what actions do I have to take in order to be able to play my role in my area of the business that would help deliver the objective for finance, which then overall links into the overall objective of the business. So it's a cascade of basically objectives, which is normal business practice.
But it must be really important to get the right nudges, Jeremy. If you don't get the right nudges.
Absolutely. And a lot of time is spent on that as well. And I think, again, you know, full transparency, I think Jeff and I would say that it's one of the lessons learned for, you know, the next sprint that we do with them. It will be that we'll probably need to spend more time in sharpening those nudges, because it got to probably week 2 or 3, and we decided that some of the nudges just weren't in line with actually what we're trying to do. And that's the beauty of the system as well, because it's very agile. Because in effect, it's getting away from what is the traditional, the traditional kind of process of annual reviews. I know it's gone to monthly reviews now, but what you're doing is you're being very agile on a weekly basis. If it's not working, then the whole idea is to make sure that you've got the right nudges that are going to deliver the right metric, not just for the business, but for the individual. So if the actions they're taking, the nudges they're taking, are not getting the delivery, then change them.
Okay, there's some great questions coming in here, but maybe just tackle that one about the running reports and analytics, which Martin Kirk and some other people have referred to.
Yeah, so we've got a suite of reports. It's all part of the technology that's accessible to managers. It's like a hierarchy, as you'd expect in a traditional kind of HR system, I guess, where Jeff ultimately would have the overall view of the division, and then his direct reports would have views of their own teams. So the reporting, you can go basically at whatever hierarchy level you need to.
And that's real time. As far as you're viewing it in real time.
Right. Yeah, real time. Obviously, people using the app. The app then links to the desktop. The desktop has all the reporting on it. But the reporting's there again. I just need to stress that, though. The reporting's there to help support people, not to whip people. This is really important. It's not a performance management tool that says Athol hasn't done his nudges, so I better have a conversation with him. It's not about that. It's about what's happening with Athol, and I need to understand what. And that's all the coaching. That's all the peer coaching. That's all the one-on-one coaching that we do from an external point of view.
Jeremy, you take a little breather there. Craig, I'm just wondering from what you've been listening to there. You know, you've been HR director and you're now interim HR director of the ambulances. Just first thing from you is, how much change do you see people dealing with right at this juncture? And therefore, do you think we need to consider different ways of achieving behavioral change? Has COVID flushed that out?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, I mean, every organization is going through huge change at the moment, not just through the pandemic, but just in terms of the way in which business is evolving. And I think there's a lot of challenge to existing systems of performance management, performance measurement. And one of my questions really is, are you seeing, when you're deploying these tools and these practices, are you displacing traditional appraisal, or are you sitting alongside it? and is it supplementary to more established sort of ways of working? With the first question. My second question is really about the role of HR within that, and do you find resistance from HR directors, HR teams to deploying it because it doesn't fit with their notion of traditional performance management? So maybe those kind of two aspects, really.
So Jeremy, you're not getting much of a break. Is it displacing performance management? That's the first one. And then any resistance from HR?
I think the short answer to both the questions is no, Craig. It definitely can work alongside it. The other difference really with this approach is that we're operating in short sprints. So we're operating in 10 to 12 week sprints. And the idea behind that is that, in my experience, is traditional methods of performance management it's too, by the time you set the objectives in January, they're not necessarily going to be relevant in February, let alone half yearly. And then at the end of 12 months, by the end of 12 months, most people can't even remember what their objectives were, let alone whether or not they've hit them or not. Mm. And this is just a much more an agile way of being able to deal with trying to help people be better in the roles that they're doing. And no, we've had, I mean, we've been, it's been amazing in terms of the response that we've got. People are really generally very interested, because I think what most people are looking for is a way of supporting people in the workplace and generally getting closer to it. I think the data is really important. It's the combination of real life data and the coaching conversations is really the thing that kind of works. The technology is brilliant because it nudges you. And obviously there's a behavioral change and science behind that, because if you get a nudge, and if if you're putting something, if you're allocating a time and a date to do something, more chance of actually taking the action on it. But it's actually the conversations. So this is not getting away from kind of Big Brother just using technology to kind of manage people. This is very much about using technology to help, but it's still down to the conversations. It's still down to that one-on-one.
And resistance from HR? Not so far. No. Do you have a view on a particular type of company that might be more likely to use this successfully? Because you're using tech here.
No, I mean it can go into SMEs, it can go into corporates, it can go across the board. I feel it's really it's more of the culture of the organization. Are the organization serious about supporting their people? It's a bugbear of mine. A lot of company reports have people are our greatest asset, but actually, do people really support that? And my passion is trying to help people perform the best they can in the workplace. Okay. And I generally believe that this process does that.
So just let me run through some of the other questions and comments that are in here. We might have picked up a few of them. I think Jade is asking here, how would it complement an organization's people strategy? I think you've probably answered that. Are there initiatives that could be implemented, refining conversations, career toolkits, skills to avoid micromanagement? We've probably covered that. Will's got a good question in here. Why 10 weeks?
Because we find that it's enough time in terms of forming the formation of habits. Not necessarily, there's no actual science. There's a lot of different science out there that says it takes 21 days, it takes a period of time, but 10 weeks is enough to get a process and a momentum going. We also find that after 4 to 5 weeks, you tend to get a dip. That actually happened with Jeff. So people, you set off on a bit like New Year's resolutions. You set off, with all great intentions, and then there becomes a dip. So what we tend to do is we did with Jeff is we do a half stage kind of like relaunch, and then we find 10 weeks is enough time for people to focus, to get things done. You can do a lot in 10 weeks, a lot. You can you can deliver. Well, Jeff's the living proof.
Okay, there's some quick fire ones here. resistance to surveillance technology, I think we've probably covered that. What support do you provide to teams with regards to coaching skills? How do you help the teams coach?
Yeah, so we do peer coaching. We also did some work on actually what is coaching. So we did a couple of workshops with Jeff and his direct reports on actually what is coaching. So coaching techniques, coaching skills, in order to be able to enable them to have better coaching conversations. And then I did a lot of peer coaching also with Jeff's direct reports as well. And we did one-on-one coaching with one of Jeff's direct reports as well, so that they could use us as a kind of a way to say, well, I'm having this conversation, it hasn't gone well, this is what I need to do, what would you advise? So we're there all the way to kind of to help and support the people who are coaching.
Okay, Nima asks, is there a particular coaching model that you're using?
No, there isn't. There isn't a particular model.
Okay. And what else was there? How do you fit in, Chris Thorne, how do you fit in one-to-one or team coaching to support the nudges? Did everyone receive coaching?
Yes, either
some way, don't they?
Yeah, either one-on-one or peer coaching, I thought.
Yeah. Okay. So Jeff, if you're doing it again, or you presumably are going to do it again, or hopefully you're going to do it again, what are the learnings, and how can you build on it? How can you get it into the DNA of the organization?
I think the key learning, which we sort of touched on a little bit, is around that the people involvement in creation of the nudges. I think if they're part of the creation, they're part of the outcome, they're part of the success. So where we did try at the start to create a guide around the nudges, I'd probably go back to having more input at the start. So I think that very quickly solidifies people's buy-in, because they can see, actually, I'm contributing. It doesn't mean we have to accept every nudge that people put forward, because we'd end up with too many again. But I think that would be a key aspect. And I think really just the continuation of the communication. I think the communication is so key. Again, there's been a couple of questions around sort of Big Brother, that reporting, monitoring. Is it micromanagement? Actually, what I found was giving individuals the visibility of how they are doing against what they themselves are trying to achieve is really powerful. So I would probably use that more than maybe I did. The reflection that Jeremy touched on, I think, was really powerful, to do that on a weekly basis and reflect on good, bad, ugly, and make it very sort of very human, very Jeff in the way that the communication was written as well. It wasn't a formal report that came out every week. There was humour in there, and all the good sort of things. And so I think for me, using the data probably a little bit more myself to just work with the teams and the upfront nudge creation, making sure we get that lockdown before launch, so we don't end up sort of drip feeding into the first week like we did.
Great. And Jeremy, how are you going to develop it from here?
Yeah, there's two ways. We're still obviously developing the technology. The next bit that we're looking at on our roadmap is the cascade. So organizations can do a lot of the cascade themselves, kind of turning if you like, the technology into more of a kind of a SaaS platform, still with a lot of support from Blackar. And then we're also going to individual. So if it was to be rolled out to large organizations, thousands of people, then we're also going to make sure that the app is very kind of very focused upon individual requirements, so people could actually use it for their own personal nudges without the company seeing it as well. So you could use it as a health and well-being app as well. So that's and then, as we expand, as we get more and more users and more people onto the platform, then we'll start looking at things like AI and telling us the trends and all that good stuff, Athol. But yeah, that's the direction of travel.
And the other question here is, how much does the technology rely on the coaching and the people? Because I think probably behind that is, could you just have the technology? Would it work or would it fail? I mean, what is that combination between human interface and technology to get these results?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is no technology necessarily works on its own. You've got, especially with people, there's still got to be a people element, and there's still got to be some form of people element. The technology is fantastic, but of course it's enhanced by the quality of the conversations, and that's really what we're about. It's about the quality of the conversation that people have, and the technology is just the enabler. It enables us to have those conversations.
And Jeremy, you're a bit of the inventor of this, okay? I know that you're pulling lots of thoughts from lots of different people, and you invented it before COVID. And I was saying earlier that it accelerated through COVID because we thought there was much more of a need for that with remote teams and with the scale of change. Why did you invent it? How did it come about? How did this become your baby?
It was some of the reasons I've just said. I thought my frustrations as an HRD was, we'd put on fantastic events, we'd spend a lot of money on L&D, we'd send people off to amazing business schools, but Monday morning came around and their inbox got full up and they wouldn't take the action. So we wanted to put something into the business that basically would help people take action on the learning. That was one of the reasons, which is, we call it the learning stays in the room. It doesn't come out of the room, and that was one of the main reasons. The other reason was a lot of the challenges in businesses is the lack of training that managers have in order to be able to have proper coaching, supportive conversations. And this basically gives you that. And the reason why a lot of people don't is because they've not been trained on it. They don't know how to have that coaching conversation. What Nudge does is it gives you real life data, and it means that you're very agile in the way that you can actually deal with things. So from a line manager's point of view, you can see whether your team's not had a good week or not. And then that gives you the opportunity to actually go and do something about it and try and help them. Why, what's the themes. And one of the things that it also gave us in my previous business is it gives you the details of where the challenges are. So if one area of the business is all saying that there is a challenge with this, because we ask them what's the one thing that we can help you with, then you can then go after it. So it makes it much easier to then deal with actual business issues.
And a final comment from you, Jeff. You've talked about, to me personally, you've talked about it was making things doable was a nice phrase that you used, and it changed the way that we work. What's your final reflection on it?
I think you kind of touched on it a minute ago when you said, I assume you'll be doing another sprint. Absolutely. I'm not here as a kind of one time, it was great, thanks very much. The impact it had on the individuals and the team, and I'm sure if you spoke to the individuals themselves, you couldn't change the team the way we did without that structure and without that people involvement. I think, again, the question that came up, could you have the tech on its own? Personally, no, because I think actually the value is in how you then work with the expertise and the experience that the Black Arm Group bring in that engagement. So, for me personally, having an app that just kind of pings you every now and then without understanding the holistic approach, I think wouldn't have worked. So final phrase from me, Jeremy, look forward to continuing to work with you and the team.
A happy customer. What a good way to end. Jeremy, there's one or two people have said, can we see the tool? Can we see the interface? I can reveal now to everyone on the call that when you watch the 10 o'clock news, it's on the surface, it seems quite smooth, but underneath there's a lot of paddling. There's been a bit of paddling in the last hour with the technology. So we can't show you the technology just now, but what do people want to do if they want to see the technology?
Well, contact me. I'm on LinkedIn, Jeremy Campbell. Go to blackhole.group.com is our website that you can contact us through that. Very happy to set up demos, show people the tech, show the capability of it. It's not just the tech, the approach. We can talk through the approach and see if that's specific, that's the right thing to do for folk.
And your email is nice and easy. I think it's jeremy@blackislegroup.com. jeremy@blackislegroup.com. Craig, that's us.
Very good.
hopefully we've been able to plant some thoughts and some seeds. But I certainly think that, you know, as we started the webinar, we think we need to think differently about so many different things right at this moment coming out of COVID, and how we maximize performance and how we coach our people is one of them.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. Really insightful, and yeah, I'd be keen to see the platform myself, actually. Yeah, I think we got a lot of engagement on the chat and lots of questions coming through. So can I give a very big thanks to all three of you, to Athol, Jeremy and Phil. A really good session this afternoon. So before we close, I wanted to mention our next webinar, which is on March the 24th. The subject matter is establishing commercial credibility for next generation HR leaders. So it's all about HR capability and profile and competence. Should be a great session. It's been run by two very experienced, established HR leaders, Tony Bainbridge and David Chapman. They've recently set up a new consultancy called CEO Whispering, which is all about the role of HR directors and advising the chief executives and doing that effectively. So a great session for both new and established HR directors. So that's coming up on the 24th of March, and I hope that you can join us. And we're currently planning our first live event towards the end of May, first live event post-COVID. So watch this space, and details will be coming out soon about that. But we will be continuing to offer, in a hybrid fashion, both webinars and live events, like many organisations. So that's all for now. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.